Welcome to the Stark Reflections on Writing and Publishing podcast. There has never been a better time for writers. More information, options, and opportunities are available to you, but navigating these requires insight. Join Mark Leslie Lefebvre as he draws upon more than a quarter century of experience as a writer, a bookseller, and a trusted book industry consultant to explore and reflect on the writing and publishing landscape to help you make informed choices on your writer journey.
Hello and welcome to episode 17 of the Stark Reflections podcast. This is your host, Mark Leslie Lefebvre, and in today's episode, I have a wonderful conversation with Steena Holmes. Steena is an award-winning USA Today and Amazon best-selling author from Calgary, Alberta. Yes, she's a Canadian like me, and we actually met in the UK, of all places, years ago on a panel at a book industry show. Steena writes psychological suspense, family drama, women's fiction, and sweet romance. She publishes under an Amazon-owned imprint, as well as her own self-publishing imprint. She's a fan of reading, of chocolate, and of traveling. Speaking of traveling, Steena, who is a wife and a mother of 3 daughters, has created an authentic and dynamic relationship with her readers, who she's been a caring and loving tour guide for, as she took them on a unique journey with her on her own path through writing. In our conversation, we talk a lot about the importance of this relationship with her readers and in always putting them first. But first, I wanted to provide a bit of a personal update. The running training for the end of the month for the 29th of April is going a little bit behind schedule, but it's going okay. Liz and I have been going for at least a short run every single day, and the longer runs on the weekend. This coming weekend, we're going to try to hit the 18K. I think the most we've hit is about 15K at this point. So we're a little bit behind, but confident that provided that it's not another snowstorm on the 29th, that this will actually be an okay half marathon. In terms of the marathon of writing, it's actually been really, really great. A few things. I'm just working on a rewrite right now for about an 8,000 word zombie story that's going to be published in an online digital chapbook with 2 other zombie stories that's listed up for pre-order right now on Amazon. And I have been working diligently every morning this week on a nonfiction book for writers about self-publishing indie insider secrets based on my 25 years of experience in the industry. And it's been going really, really well. I've got a little over 14,000 words written so far. And this should be about somewhere in the 40 to 50,000 range word count, although my estimations keep going up as I write each new chapter in this book. And so that's been a really satisfying thing to work on. So I've been bouncing between that nonfiction writing and the fiction writing that I've been doing. And I forced myself for the zombie story because I put the book up for pre-order. I can't change it. I can't back out. I have to get it done. I got it back from my editor. I'm just working on a rewrite for that. And that has to actually be, the final version has to be loaded by Friday, April 20th for it to go live on April 24th. And I will include a link to Z is for Zombie, or Z is for Zombie, for those of you listening from the US, where it is listed right now on Amazon. Another thing that I have been working on has been the release of Free Friday Frights, which was partially inspired by my conversation in a few episodes back with author T.S. Paul. And I've been doing that. Obviously, I started on April 6th. I did one on Friday the 13th last week, and I have another one planned tomorrow on Friday, April 20th. And I've been picking different times of the day for this. And I want to talk a little bit about this because it's kind of important, because I was doing this in order to establish and build a relationship with a potential reader base by offering them something unique and free. Last week, because it was Friday the 13th, I ended up writing a nonfiction. I did some research and wrote a nonfiction piece similar to my nonfiction work. So again, every second week I'm appealing to the slightly two different audiences, those who like the ghost stories and the creepy true stuff, and then those who prefer fiction. So again, twice a month I'm appealing to one of those audiences, and there is a bit of an overlap. But last week, I got a chance to write a new piece of nonfiction that may or may not be used in a forthcoming book somewhere, sometime. And I'm happy that I'm producing short fiction, I'm producing short nonfiction, all in the middle of I'm about to get the edit back for Macabre Montreal, the next nonfiction book. I'm working on a self-published nonfiction book, and I'm also finalizing an anthology that I'm editing for WMG Publishing, which is called Feel the Love in their Fiction River series. And yes, as a writer of thrillers and ghost stories and stuff like that, this is an editor wanting who normally doesn't read a lot of romance, who wants to actually follow the theme of love in all these stories. So there's a lot of different balls in the air, but I'm actually having fun with the different parts of my creative and writing and publishing brain to put them all together. Now, I want to talk a little bit about the Free Friday Frights, because I look at this not as an instant success, but as a long-term thing. And I want to illustrate this, particularly for those of you who may have something published, may have work out there, and are getting frustrated that, that the sales aren't there, or that you're not seeing the numbers that you were expecting. It's a long-term thing. I still get occasional sales of a book I published in 2004. It's still there. It's still available. I look at the long term. Let me look at the sad story of Free Friday Frights from the 13th. I didn't go and look to see how many people actually went to the website or actually have read the associated blog post that I posted on that. But again, it's not even in the hundreds, I can imagine. And similarly, even though I'm doing the free readings at different times of the day, because there's people in different parts of the world, here are some stats on the approximate 25 minutes to half hour talk that I did on Friday night. I believe it was at 10 p.m. Eastern. And on my author Facebook page, I had one viewer for maybe about 5 minutes of my half hour talk, actual live viewer. Okay. I have, and it is the 19th of April that I'm recording this, and I had 15 views of this video on my Facebook feed. A couple days ago, I took it and I uploaded it to YouTube, again to extend the reach for that free talk, and I have had 3 views since I posted it 2 days ago on YouTube. So potentially less than 20 people have seen this. But I'm not going to despair. I'm going to think about the fact that 20 people have seen this. And maybe by next week, and if those of you are interested, let me know. More than happy to share. Okay, did it change? Did I get one more view next week? Wow, that's awesome. It may not sound like much, and it's not the giant increases and the celebratory successes that we want in our careers. But maybe next week I get one more view. And maybe the week after that I get one more view. But maybe in a year I get 52 more views, and that's 52 more people who became aware of my stuff, some of which may actually check out what I'm publishing and what I'm doing. They may go on to just read more of my free stuff. Maybe they just follow me along and say, hey, I'm enjoying this free thing. This Mark guy, yeah, he's okay. That's just fine with me. What I'm doing is something I'm really, really passionate about. I'm having fun sharing it, and I am having fun with releasing it and then seeing what happens. And again, I don't expect this to be successful in any way, shape, or form in the short term, except for the satisfaction I get from doing it and the fact that it's forcing me to write. Remember, I wrote a new nonfiction piece specifically for Friday the 13th, and chances are I'm going to probably paint myself into a corner and write some new fiction that may not even be edited by the time I get it ready for Friday, like a raw, uncut thing, just to share that process as a writer and potentially get some feedback from the reading community on whether or not they think it's a worthwhile story to keep working on, or to revise. So in any case, I wanted to point out the fact that I'm continuing to put a significant amount of effort into Free Friday Frights. Very little attention is being paid to it. No advertising or promotion apart from a few social media pokes and shares. But again, I'm not looking for a short-term gain. I'm looking to develop something more long-term. And that specifically ties in nicely to this discussion with Stina in terms of that relationship with her readers that we talk about, which is fascinating. Now, this is the segment of the show where we are going to get into the terrible tongue twister, also known as twisting by the fool. Twisting by the, twisting by the, twisting by the, twisting by the, twisting by the fool, twisting by the fool, twisting by the fool. Such a fool. Okay, so this week's tongue twister sent to me from Will at Findaway Voices is a longer one. Look, it looks like a poem. It's got 4 lines here, and it says, okay, here we go. 3 sweet switched watches watch 3 washed swish which swatch watch switches. Which sweet switched swish watch which watches which washed swish which swatch watch switch. Okay. All right. I'm only saying that one once because you and I only need to suffer through this once. I will include the text for this one on the show notes on starkreflections.ca. But wow, there were more holes in my pronunciation there than you could find in a good piece of Swiss cheese. This tongue twister was sponsored by Findaway Voices, who actually have access and a great platform for authors to either upload their own works that they have produced themselves, or to find professional narrators who don't trip over their tongue the way I do. And you can find out more about them at starkreflections.ca/findaway. Now, the Findaway sponsorship helps pay for the hosting fees for this podcast, but it doesn't pay for my time in producing the show. And so I do have a Patreon account set up at patreon.com/starkreflections. There's also a link to that in the show notes here on the starkreflections.ca website. I want to thank the existing patrons. Your patronage means a lot to me, and remind folks that you will have access to additional content as a patron supporter of the Stark Reflections show. That content will be written content, it'll be audio content, and it will be visual content that I am posting to that Patreon site. But that's enough pre-show rambling from me. Let's get on to the main content, the interview with Steena Holmes. Hey, Stina, welcome to the podcast.
Hey, Mark, how are you doing?
I'm doing great. Now, we are right in the thralls of your latest launch for The Forgotten Ones, which is a slightly different style of novel for you. I mean, it's something you've been doing a lot more lately, but it's new. Can you tell us just a little bit about that?
Oh, it's a psychological suspense, and it details or goes into all those deep, dark secrets that we have within our families. The lies that we tell to keep those secrets hidden, and then how deadly those secrets can actually be when they come out in light. Okay.
So, this is something that's already been getting some rave reviews. It's only been out for a few days. We're talking about this in early April. It's just been out for a few days. It's been getting rave reviews. Where did this book come from? What was your inspiration?
Yeah, I was in a dark place. My middle daughter has been dealing with some mental health issues, and we've had a lot of hospital visits, suicide prevention, stuff like that. And so when I was writing this book, I was right in the thick of it, and I needed an outlet. And
Okay.
this story just seemed to pour out of me. This is probably one of my favorite stories that I've written, just because it was so easy to write. As dark as it was, and as twisted as people are saying it is, it came right from my heart and all those dark things that were there.
Yeah, I read an interview where you said this was the easiest, but you've written how many books? Like you've got what?
Over 30 now.
Yeah, 30. Wow. And this latest one was the easiest to write after all this time.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay. I want to, for the listeners, I want to take them back because this is a dark, dark psychological suspense novel. But let's go back to the novel your first novel, 30 plus novels ago. Let's go back to Finding Emma, because that was a blockbuster that really established you as a New York Times bestselling author.
Yeah, it was amazing.
So what's the difference for people who aren't familiar, the difference between a novel like Finding Emma and a novel like The Forgotten Ones?
Well, Finding Emma, I still deal with those dark issues. It was a woman trying to find her kidnapped daughter.
Okay.
But I was softer with Finding Emma.
Okay.
And I didn't want to talk about those horrible things that could actually happen when it came to those topics, where now I am quite willing and ready to go into those dark corners.
Is Finding Emma perhaps a novel where the monster or the evil stays behind the door, and it's the fear of the lost daughter and what might have happened to her and looking for her, as opposed to The Forgotten Ones that just kind of opens it up and says, here it is, ugliness and all?
Well, Finding Emma, I made the antagonist someone that you could really like, and you felt sorry for them as a couple, even though you knew that they were doing something wrong. You felt for them, and you rooted for them in a way, where The Forgotten Ones, right off the bat, like the very first paragraph, my main character David talks about, living hell on earth and how he's being tortured and whatnot because of what he did. And you don't have to like him, and I don't care if you like him. And I go right into what he did. Finding Emma, I wanted everyone to walk away with that was such a good book, and my heart. This one, I'm just, damn, that was twisted.
You seem to like, you've written 4 different distinct types of fiction, if we can call it psychological suspense, family drama, women's fiction, sweet romance. Is it difficult to move from one genre or one style to another?
Not if it's done right. I started off with a sweet romance.
Okay.
Well, no. Technically, I started off with Christian fiction,
right.
And then I went into erotic romance, and then I went into sweet romance.
Okay.
But
kind of played the whole
technically. But for me, I found to go from sweet romance to women's fiction to psychological. It's a journey that I was taking my readers on, and I knew eventually that I'm going to get into the darker books. That's my goal, is to do these thrillers.
Was that always the intent when you first started with it?
Yep, it's always been my intent. I just didn't realize, as a new author back in 2010, 2011, right. When I published Finding Emma, I was one of those authors who thought I could write whatever I wanted, whenever I wanted, and readers would follow me, right? And I realized afterwards that we make a promise to our readers with each book that we write. Right. And readers are my main focus, and they always have been who I consider when I write. And I don't go for the sales, I go for the readers, and I focus on the readers for every book. So I knew if I wanted them to go from a sweet romance to women's fiction, or from romance to women's fiction, I needed to bridge the gap. So I did a sweet romance that was more on the women's fiction side. So then I do women's fiction, and I thought I would only do a couple books, and it ended up I did a lot longer, a lot more books. But this book, The Forgotten Ones, is a bridge to the next book that will be coming out in 2019, which is a lot darker.
A lot darker. See, it's almost like you're slowly moving them through airlocks to make sure that they can comfortably move from this space to this space. Now everything's okay. You're comfortable with this temperature. We're going to crank it up a notch.
Well, I want to keep them, right? And I want to honor that promise that I've made to them.
Okay.
And I don't want to break that promise. So if I go jump a huge gap right away, I'm going to lose a lot of them, and I don't want to do that.
And so, does this mean that you have seen readers that have followed you along, and you said, "Take my hand. I'm going to take you down a path that may look scary."
Trust me, I've got you. Yeah,
okay.
Totally. And they're still here, and they love me for it. It's amazing.
Oh, that's fantastic. Now, I was reading on your blog recently your talk to authors, and you'd said, "Don't do this," and it had specifically related to your belief system on what is the most important thing for you as an author, which is obviously the readers. Can you talk a little bit about the authentic readers?
So we, of course, like if our goal is just to write a book, then we are writers. If our goal is to write a book for people to read, then we're authors. And in order to do that, obviously, we need to sell these books and we need people to buy them, right? Like that's a given. But even though readers know that, they don't want to feel like they're just our cash cow, right? Okay. And they don't want to feel like they're always just handing us money. So we need an authentic readership when it comes to our books, because I can buy all the readers I want for a book, but they're not going to follow me to the next one. So all these services that are creeping up where they want you to buy reviews, or, they promise that for $50 or $100, you'll get, 20 reviews and they're going to be 5 stars, or they're going to be able to, you can do these Facebook ads and they'll boost up your rankings and you'll get in the top 100 or something like that. You're just buying your way there, and you're not actually getting your authentic readership that you need. So it's great. Those numbers look fabulous. And if you have these reviews, everyone's going to look at them and be like, wow, it must be a good book. Right. But who's going to buy it? And who's going to buy your next book? And then who's going to buy your next book? If all you're doing is buying these things, you're not creating that authentic relationship with readers so that they will follow you along in your career.
Okay. So I think I know some of the things that you're doing to maintain an authentic relationship with readers, but for writers listening to this, what are some of the things that you can do to be genuinely authentic?
Well, I think one of the easiest things that you can do is your newsletter list, right? So every author should have one. And the newsletters that you send out shouldn't be spammy and shouldn't just be focused on buy my book, buy my book. Have a relatable voice when you're writing the newsletter, and talk to them as if they're real people, as if they are your friends, because that's the relationship that you kind of want with them, or you want them to feel. And share some of yourself to them. So be relatable and be personable without being completely personal.
Okay, right. Okay, and you've done that on your blog, for example, is one of the places where I've seen you be very open and very vulnerable in admitting things. And obviously, it ties into some of the things that you've written as well. One of the things, for example, is your daughter recently turned 19, and suddenly you're faced with this trauma of you now have an adult, not the baby.
Yeah, poor me. That was my pity party.
But that's something that your readers can come to say, oh my God, just like me, when my daughter turned 19, I felt the exact same way. Or, oh no, I have a child who's 13, as I do. Oh no, I'm going to be feeling this in 5 years? Oh no, what's coming?
It's crazy how my inbox explodes with emails from readers every time I do a blog post. So like I have 21,000 subscribers to my blog.
Wow.
And the emails that I get when I do a personable and relatable post, it astounds me that they would actually reply. So, the comments aren't always on my website, which I'm okay with.
Right.
Because I'm getting one-to-one. So they email me and I email them back. And, so my daughter's birthday was 19. And basically it was like, holy shit, means I'm getting old, right? To have a 19-year-old daughter. And people are like, oh, go buy a Jack and Daniels or go buy some wine and get liquored up that night. You're fine. And let her drink all she wants. And it's okay. You're still a young baby. Don't worry. But then, like you said, other people are like, so keep me informed. Let me know if you survive, because I've got this coming up in a couple of years.
Yeah, exactly.
And it was basically like a tongue-in-cheek.
Oh, that's cool. Now, you've said this a couple times. You said personable and relatable.
Yeah.
Now, not all authors are comfortable with that. I mean, one of the joys of being an author is you can hide behind a keyboard. Nobody needs to know anything about your life.
Yes.
So, how do you address that? How would you say so? An author who says, "I'm not comfortable sharing things about my," I don't have that issue because I'm an open book.
You're an
But
open book.
but how would you address that with people who are like, I don't know if I can share personal things.
Well, when you are talking with someone in a grocery store and you're just talking about which brand of food should you get, right? You're
Right.
being relatable with them. Oh, I actually like this one, right? So
Right.
you can do little things about your life. Like you like to go for walks. You don't have to say where you go for walks. You don't have to say how long you go for walks or what kind of shoes you wear. But you can just say, I like to go for walks.
Okay.
What kind of books I like to read. Like there's ways that we can be personable with our readers so that they feel like we're being authentic without sharing all our deep dark secrets and opening that closet for them. Like I have a rule that I only talk about my family in terms of how it affects me. So I
Okay.
can talk about my daughter's mental health issues as a mom dealing with a teenage daughter who
Okay.
has mental health issues, but I'm not going to talk about her and
Right.
share her stuff because I don't want to do that to her. So I keep, I don't really post a lot of photos of my family on Facebook. I might do my dogs, but not my children.
Yeah.
So those are ways that I keep my personal life separate.
Right.
But I can talk about my kids and how, they drive me up the wall during March break when I'm trying to write and my daughter has suddenly discovered she likes really heavy bass music and rap. And she's the room right next to me.
Because even with earphones, you can still feel the vibrations, right?
Oh my gosh, yes.
Well, let's talk a little bit then about your writing. So, do you write in the home office? Do you go to a cafe? How do you do this?
So I write each book differently. I
Okay.
have an office, and right before this started, I was like, oh, I need to clean up my desk because I haven't been here in quite a few months. The book that I'm writing right now, I'm writing upstairs in my bedroom on a lounge chair. So, I get to relax and put my feet out and write with a little keyboard thing on me. The book before this one, I wrote in this office, and I was actually working on 2 books then. So I would write one book on this computer, and then I would write the other book on my laptop, so that I had a distinction in my mind of where my brain could relax.
Wow.
So while I'm working on this book right now up in my bedroom, if I need to do cover art or website stuff, I come down to my office. Now for the past month, everything's been on hold so I could meet this deadline that I didn't meet, which was yesterday. So my office was a mess, but I need to separate that stuff. So sometimes I go to a coffee shop.
Right.
Sometimes I just work upstairs in my room, or sometimes I'll be in my office. It just depends on the book.
So, for whatever book you decided a spot, you pick that spot and you stick to that spot till it's done.
Yeah,
That's
yeah.
interesting.
And it's almost like my brain knows that it's okay. We're in writing mode now.
Right. It's like that situational thing where it's kind of like going into the office. That's why sometimes people go to the coffee shop because usually there's a time limit.
Mm-hmm.
Or they kick you out without buying
Right.
a coffee every half hour or whatever, and so you're a little bit more focused than when you're at home because you're like, oh, well, the cat wants to be petted now, so now I'm going to go pet the cat. Okay, that's neat. So you just mentioned that you had just missed a deadline that you had set. Now I'm not asking this to be mean or fraud, but a lot of authors who always get the impression that every other author does everything perfectly and everything goes perfect for them, and I'm the only one who never meets my deadlines, and I'm the only one who faces challenges, and I can't get right past this character thing and whatever. So you've just met a real life, a hugely successful author. You've just met a real life challenge of your deadline. How are you going to deal with this?
Well, everything in life should be on hold right now, so that I can get this book in as fast as possible.
But life's not on hold.
Life's not on hold.
I've looked for the button. It's not there.
No, it is not. Thankfully, I just, I asked, this book that I'm writing is about DID, dissociative identity disorder.
Okay.
And there's this murders involved and whatnot. And it is a very difficult book. So The Forgotten Ones was my easiest book that I've ever written,
Okay.
and this one is probably the most difficult one. And so usually I write like from start to finish.
Right.
This one I am all over the place and writing, chapter 2 and then chapter 30, and it's piece by piece. And so I need to go through and make sure I get it all together and that everything is working, because I know I've dropped balls and plots, and I don't want to hand it to my editor like that. So I asked her if I could have, a few days grace so that I can clean it up and make sure that she doesn't have to, tell me off too much.
Okay.
About dropping too many balls in the book. But this is my first time I've actually never met a deadline.
With more than 30 novels?
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. Yeah, my first time.
Okay, so let's talk about those novels too, because when you talk about deadlines with a writer, there's there's two basic kinds of deadlines. There's a deadline imposed upon you by a publisher.
Yeah.
Or there's a self-imposed deadline for something that you completely control.
Right.
And you do both. You publish stuff independently, but you also publish with a publisher.
Yep.
Can you talk about the differences in that?
Yeah, so this is one thing that no one warned me of when I signed with the publisher, that I would have to choose between books, and that I thought that every book was equal, but it's really not. And so the book that I have with the publisher, there's a contract, and that book has to come first, even if I have these other books that I'm wanting to write on the side and publish independently. And no one ever warned me about that. I thought I could just do what I wanted, however I wanted, in the time frame that I wanted, and that's not the case.
No.
No. So it's hard sometimes to prioritize.
Okay.
I used to write 2 books at once so that I could do this, because I didn't like being told I couldn't. Okay. And then I realized that second book that I wrote was always crap. And I would have to rewrite it. So if the second book was for my publisher or an independent project, I always ended up having to rewrite it.
Okay.
Which sucks.
Now, so let's go back to the beginning of your career as a writer, because you've got these 2 different paths. When did the path diverge? When did they split? And you had the traditional publishing where you signed a contract, and you've got the indie road. When did that happen?
So it was in 2012, and then that book was published with Lake Union in 2013. Okay. So it's been 5 years and 9 books with Lake Union.
Okay.
And I've been able to still, self-publish my own stuff while writing for them. And I've been able to, I was very thankful, I was able to start a series with them. So they would publish 1 or 2 books, and I could self-publish novellas or, anything under 50K within the series.
In the same universe, so that your fans and your readers could get more from that universe.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay.
If the publisher didn't want to publish it, at least I can still do it. So that's been great.
Okay. Now, you'd mentioned something earlier in our conversation that sort of reminded me a little bit of Paul Sheldon from Stephen King's Misery. Are you familiar with that?
Yes.
It was just, the concept that he loved writing misery, but he got to a certain point where he just wanted to write something different. Of course, there is no Kathy Bates character or Annie Wilkes character who's captured you and is making you write books. But has this movement through different genres, has that been your sort of Paul Sheldon move to just try and experiment? Or you'd said you'd always wanted to write stuff that was a little bit darker? You just kind of worked your audience that way? Yeah,
so I don't know if you knew this. I think you probably do. But my husband and I were pastors for years. And I was a sweet girl that everyone loved. And I didn't want to break that facade, or, I didn't want them to see that deep darkness in me.
Okay.
So I started off on purpose thinking I only had to do these sweet and nice things. But I read this dark stuff. Like, that's my wheelhouse. That's where I go. I love the dark psychological thrillers and suspense and horror. And it's always where I wanted to be. And I never used to think I could.
Okay.
But the more I wrote, and the more I worked on my craft and learned how to write better, the more I started to believe in myself. And I'm at that place where, yeah, I can do this.
Okay. Wow, that's
Yeah.
cool. And you've taken your readers along with you, and they've trusted you.
Yes.
So what's the difference then, apart from going to the dark place? What's the difference? Obviously you have different places that you write some of them in. Um, how do you feel when you're writing? You said that the forgotten ones, because I want to come back to this, because this is I think it's magic when something like this happens, when a book comes out of you in such a natural way, as if it's always been there and it's something you've always wanted to do, even though you had no idea you were going to write it probably until
No.
the idea came. That whole process always fascinates me, because you've probably felt this before. Sometimes when you finish a book, you wonder, will I ever be able to write another one? Does that ever happen to you?
No, I have a notebook full of ideas that I just keep writing these things down.
Okay.
All these different ideas that come to me. And as soon as usually by the time I'm like halfway through the book, I'm ready.
Right.
The next book is
It's already kicking.
percolating.
Really? Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
So it's not that's not one. Your worry is more finding the pause button so that you can stop everything and just go write those 10 books that you already are itching for you to pick up.
Yeah. How do you find that balance, Mark? Do you know?
No, no, I don't. I don't. I wish I knew. I
Like,
wish I
I would
had
be
more
perfectly
hours in the
happy.
day.
I would be perfectly happy just in a little cabin by the water with, my laptop and some, like, a coffee machine and a juice smoother thing, and I just write all day. But I got 3 teenager daughters, and
All that thing.
life
So
doesn't always play fair.
no, it doesn't. So because you have 3 teenage daughters, which are
Mm-hmm.
probably keep you busy,
Mm-hmm.
and you have other responsibilities, when do you make the time to write? Like, when do you schedule that into your day?
Again, it's based on the book. I have been trying for the past 5 years to train my mind to write during the day, because
Okay.
it's my full-time job. So ultimately, the goal would be to write while they're at school. That doesn't always happen, and I can sit in front of my computer screen for hours and maybe only get 100 or 200 words. But like this book I'm writing now, it likes to be written at night. And so I find from 3 to 7, I can usually get half my words, and it'll take me from 3 to 7. And then from 7 to 8, or 7 to 9 or 8:30, the rest of those words just flow out of me. And it's almost like my brain knows that, okay, everything's done for the day. You've done all the social media stuff you need to do. You've done your stuff with kids. Your husband's downstairs. He's cleaning up. You don't have to worry about that. And you can just let the words come. So I just find it depends on the book. I would like to write during the day, but that just doesn't happen.
I understand. Well, see, I write dark stuff as well, and I have never been successful. Well, I've been occasionally successful writing during the day. It's mostly 5 in the morning till 8 in the morning, or until the world starts to wake up and get in my way. And then it's after everyone else has gone to bed. Those tend to be. And I always wondered, am I communing with something from the dark?
Well, maybe you are. Like, maybe those dark hours, maybe that's what helps feed this.
I'm wondering if that's what's helping you with the same sort of thing. It's like, oh, good, the sun's going down. Now I can be dark again.
Dang.
How long have you been a full-time writer?
Since 2011.
Since 2011. So obviously it was that big of a hit. Finding Emma was that big of a success that you knew that this was going to be your thing. Have you always wanted to be a writer?
And I didn't believe in myself enough. So when I was a teenager, yes, I wanted to. I wanted to be a teacher and go to Africa and teach other kids to write.
Okay.
But I didn't think that I could be like Nora Roberts or Stephen King or James Rollins. Like, I didn't think that I could do that.
Right.
It took me a long time to find that belief in myself that I could write, which is very sad because I wish I could have been doing this a lot sooner. But now that I've got it, I'm not letting go.
Well, I find a lot of your teenage years, the creativity seems to get beaten out of us. We start with it, and then it just gets chipped and pushed away and tucked is not important. And some people find it again. Some people never lose it.
Mm-hmm.
Looks like you found it again, which
I
was
found it again. Yeah, it was funny because I used to win awards all the time, and I'd win contests and whatnot as a teenager. And then
wow.
2005, my husband sent me a link to a website. It was a publishing contest, and if you won, you got a publishing contract.
Okay.
And so I wrote a book in 6 months and sent it off, and I knew nothing about story structure or like. I knew nothing. I knew nothing. I don't know how I won, but I did.
You were a reader.
I'm a reader. Yeah.
If you're a reader, then you kind of understand. I mean, that helps, right?
That's true. That's true. But so that was like the first kick in the pants that I had, that maybe I could do this. And then it took me another 5 years to actually do it. I kept trying. I wrote some things. I wrote a lot of supernatural stories, like angels and demons and hell and brimstone, and I couldn't land an agent. And then someone challenged me to write erotic romance, and I did. And I sold it to an e-publisher. And then I wrote that for a little bit, self-published it, and then I realized that's not what I want to be writing. I want to write about real issues. So I wrote Finding Emma, and I didn't know how to classify it. And so I just put it in the women's fiction area. And I quit my job. And I took a job from home to work part-time. And then I published Finding Emma, and I thought I would be doing this for another couple of years, because originally it took me 6 months to earn $100.
Right.
And then Finding Emma came out in like 10,000 copies the first month.
Wow.
Which is crazy.
That's fantastic. And I love hearing the fact that it wasn't an overnight success. It was something that you did work at and worked hard at. Now, Finding Emma became a whole universe of novels and novellas. How did you connect them? How did you work that out?
So back then, women's fiction, you didn't do novellas, and you really didn't do series either too much. But I didn't know that. And so I wrote the first book, and then they wanted another book. And in the meantime, readers were wanting to know more about the history of David and his wife. And so I wrote a novella, and then I did another novella with all the deleted scenes from Emma's Secret that I thought were really important, and the publisher wouldn't let me have. And then readers still wanted to know more. And so I decided, even though I was done, I decided to try something different. So with my newsletter, I would write a chapter for every month.
Okay.
Or it would be multiple chapters or whatnot. But so it would start in January, and January would be the month in the book, right? And I would lead up to the end of the year. And so my readers, if they sign up for the newsletter, they get these stories for free. And at the end of the year, I put them together and I sold them. And that wasn't being done at the time either with women's fiction. So it was It was interesting. I didn't really know all these things that I couldn't do until afterwards, when everyone was like, well, you don't do that. And that doesn't work. And I'm like, well, it is for me. Why don't you try it?
That doesn't work. Sorry, I take back the last year. Sorry, guys. Can't have any of the success. But I love that. So you first wrote these stories for your readers to give them something more about what they wanted. And then you were able to take those and say, wow, I've got enough to produce a book, because there's probably other people who are going to enjoy it. But did you find your readers went out and got it just because they had to have everything?
So that is still my top selling series.
Really?
Even though that was, back in 2012, and my, you look back on those books and like, oh my God, I wish I could edit it, rewrite it. But they still sell really, really well. And even Stillwater, I have a Stillwater's Rising with Lake Union. They only it was supposed to be a 3-book series, and they only took the one.
Right.
And it didn't really sell too well. It's probably one of my poorest ones. But readers loved it enough that they wanted to know more. So I did 3 or 4 novellas in that. And the first one I give away for free, but I also sell it. And people do both. They get it for free or they buy it. And that is probably my second best-selling.
Wow. The one that didn't initially do well.
So amazingly, my novellas sell more than that book.
Really?
Yeah.
Wow.
I do not understand. But whatever.
A lot of publishing is basically throwing at the dartboard and hoping you get the right combination. So you've done in in just 5 or so years, basically,
Yes.
you've
Yep.
done a significant volume of work. You've had multiple experiences writing. I would say, I was going to say writing for multiple audiences, but you're writing for an audience. You've just taken them on a ride with you.
Yeah.
Rather than, and I love that because you didn't go find a new audience. You slowly brought them with you. Getting their trust must have been quite the feat, but you did it. What is the best advice that you remember receiving in your author career that you look back and think, wow, I really appreciate learning this piece of thing, this advice?
Oh, so I remember it clearly. I had put out a novella that wasn't ready to be put out, and I was rushing.
Okay.
And I had someone email me, and they basically gave me a talking to, and it was probably the only time they've ever been harsh with me. But
Right.
they said, you're better than this, and your readers deserve better than this. And
Oh,
the fact that you're rushing to put out a product for your readers that isn't ready for them is cheating. And
okay.
you're not treating your readers with the respect that they deserve. And
Wow.
so I've kept that in mind, especially in the past couple of years with, like in the romance industry, you're writing, some people are putting out books like something every month, right? Like
Right.
they're going so fast. And I'm not saying everyone is rushing. For me, I would be.
Right. Yeah. Because
If,
you have to
if,
stick to your own
yeah,
schedule for
yeah,
writing.
everyone has their own strengths and weaknesses, and me rushing my stories and trying to put out as many as I could just for the sake of those sales wouldn't be good. I would probably destroy my career more than helping it.
Right.
So I've kept that in mind that I can't rush my books for the sake of sales. I have to keep my readers forefront of what I do.
Okay. Wow. And
I don't know
you
if you've noticed, I focus on my readers a lot.
No, I've noticed that, and I love that. I mean, that's the most important thing. I mean, you're focusing on writing the kinds of stories you want to read,
Mm-hmm.
the kind of stories you want to tell,
Yeah.
but you're also writing the stories that you know your readers are looking for. But then you're also giving them, it's kind of like here's the recipe that you like. I'm going to throw in a little spice here. Now, you may not think you're going to enjoy it, but
But
just
I
give it a
promise.
taste. Just give it a taste, and then I'm going to try a little bit more. I love that because you're taking them on this journey with you. They're part of that journey. You're not just pushing stuff out and they're accepting it. You're going with them, and I think that's a significant. There's a significant difference in how you've approached that, which I think is something that all of us authors can learn from, looking at that and remember why you're doing this. Apart from the fact that you probably have no choice and you have to write, you have to tell stories.
Yeah.
But the reason you're writing these stories is because there's people who want to read them.
Yep.
There's people on the other end of things. You have this. I'm rereading Stephen King's On Writing right now because
Oh, so
every
good.
few years I read, and I just got past the chapter where he basically his writing is telepathy. Writing is I'm saying I'm writing this right now and you're reading it right now and we're now connected across time and space in this magical place, and you've captured that in a wonderful way, but you've also taken them on the journeys because somebody can start with probably any one of your books and just go on the ride with you.
They could, yeah.
Where would so because you have different, at least 4 different distinct types of things.
Mm-hmm.
Where would different types of readers best join into the Stina Holmes magical universe of writing?
So if you like a little bit of twist and suspense, start with The Memory Child.
Okay.
That was my first tiptoe into the psychological suspense, and I wish I had continued with that, but I got talked out of it. So
Okay.
that would be the first. And then read the forgotten ones, because I know they're going to like it. If you love the heartfelt community, you want to cry type of book,
Right.
then read Saving Abby.
Okay.
That would be good. If you like those stories that are realistic, but told in a different viewpoint, then read my Stillwater Rising series, because that's all about what's happening right now. So the small town school shootings.
Okay.
But instead of focusing on the shooting, I focus on the community and how they heal
Oh.
afterwards, and especially when the shooter's mother lives in that community. right? And what happens with her and the people who are involved. So that would be a good place to start as well. And then, if you just want a really nice book that just touches your heart and makes you smile, then read Finding Emma.
Okay.
You'll enjoy it.
Sounds fun. Too many to start with. I'm going to want to start with audio. Which of your books are in?
So they're all in audio, like all the Union ones.
Okay.
Listen to the forgotten ones, because
Yeah.
the narrators that they have, it's a male and a female, are fabulous. And I am hearing so many awesome things about them.
Oh, that's
And
fantastic.
how they've done this story. So I would definitely start with that.
Yeah, I think Gone Girl was done that way. The male and female perspective were done in the audiobook. I'm sure I listened to it because
I'm sure you did.
Yeah, in the car all the time. Well, that's awesome. That's going to be the first one that I pick up then. That is fantastic. Any advice that I know you've shared some great advice that you have, but any advice that you have for writers who look at Stina Holmes and say, wow, I would want 1/10 of how she got to where she got. What would you advise that they do?
So this is going to be self-promo, but sign up for my Branding with Intent newsletter.
Okay.
I give 5 free classes. You get 1 email a day, and it talks about how to brand with the intent of reaching readers.
Okay.
And so that's free. And then afterwards, I have some videos that you can watch about branding, and I do like a one-on-one coaching. But really, what I wish more authors would do is just focus on your readers instead of trying to get those sales. I know we need the sales. I know a lot of people live off those sales, right? And I understand that that's important and crucial, but your readers will know that that's all you're doing is trying to get the sale. And they're not going to be loyal, and they're going to move from you to someone else, and it won't matter when you have another book out. But if you can focus on your readers and focus on creating a connection with them, and it's not hard to do, then they'll wait for you to have your next book out. And it doesn't matter what genre you're in, and it doesn't matter how voracious those readers are. They'll remember your name, and they'll wait for you to have another book out, and they'll stay with you.
Wow, that is fantastic advice. Thank you. Now, for the writers listening to this, where can they find out more about you? How can they connect with you on social media, etc.?
So obviously my website, and then the Branding with Intent is on my website as well. But I'm on Facebook, and for readers, I have a reading group on Facebook that's like a community. And then I'm also involved with Readers Coffee House. We have like 7,000 readers on there, and it's all we do is talk about books. It's amazing. But then for the writers, just email me and find me on Facebook and go to my website and connect. And I love talking about brand and readers, if you can't tell. And I'm always there to help if someone needs it.
Right.
I never say no. You can't. I won't tell you what I did. If I can do it, then I know everyone can do it, because I knew nothing when I started. It's possible. Cool.
Well, thank you so much for taking the time to chat with me today.
Well, thanks, Mark, for having me. I really appreciate it.
I wanted to reflect on something that Stina mentioned and focused on, not just in this interview, but in the very way that she behaves on a daily basis. She spoke about being personable and relatable. And she also spoke about being genuine and authentic. People can see through a fake persona. Let's think for a minute about Joanna Penn, the host of the Creative Penn podcast. This is a podcast that I wholeheartedly recommend you listen to. Now, if you're familiar with Joanna, you might notice that she's always upbeat, chipper, and positive. You can tell there's a smile in her voice when she is speaking just by listening to her podcast, and you will rarely ever catch her saying or focusing on anything negative. She's human like you and I. So does this mean she isn't being authentic? No, not at all. On the contrary. Like anyone, Joanna has bad days. She has dark moods. There are times when she isn't able to produce a smile or inflect a positive tone. She gets exhausted. There are times, particularly because she's an introvert, that she needs to just lock herself away from people in a dark room and decompress. particularly after being in public or having to mingle with people. Joanna loves people, but she can also easily exhaust herself because socializing can be extremely draining for a person who is introverted. But you only ever see the positive side of Joanna. That's because she has made a determination to be a positive voice in our industry. She has focused on highlighting hope and optimism and the marvelous possibilities that exist within publishing for writers. There is already enough despair, enough hopelessness, enough anger in the world. She made a decision to be that authentic, positive person to her audience. She also purposely decided not to share negativity. Now, I often do something similar. I don't post negative reviews of books. That's usually because if I'm not liking a book that I'm reading, I won't finish reading it. Life is too short. And if I haven't finished a book, how could I then possibly offer an honest and useful review because I haven't read the entire book? I've only read part of the book, and they don't have part book reviews. I might include a constructive comment or a negative comment in a review that I post, but for the most part, because I believe in books, I believe in reading, and I believe in sharing that passion with others, that if I'm going to take the time to talk or write about a book, I'm going to take the time because I think that that book is worth considering reading. Because I think books are worth reading. Now, that's a personal choice I've made. There are enough negative reviews out there. I want to offer, when it comes to books and reading, for my message to the world to be of a positive nature. I don't want to be a voice that says, don't read this, because that's my opinion. I'd rather add it to the, you should check this out voice, or you might actually enjoy this if. It's a personal choice I've made. It doesn't mean I'm not authentic about the books I like. It means I'm careful about being negative about books because I think books make the world a better place and I want to bring more positivity to that world. So I can write an honest and authentic review despite the fact that I only invest time in writing them for books that I appreciate and think are worth that time. So let's return to Joanna. You might also think that because she doesn't put on her grumpy or angry mood on display for her audience to see, that doesn't mean she isn't authentic as the upbeat and friendly and personable woman you've come to know and love. But she is 100% authentic. She is 100% real. And actually, yes, she really is optimistic and genuine. I've been listening to Joanna's podcast since almost the beginning. And I've hung out with Joanna multiple times over the years, and I can tell you that even though in intimate one-on-one conversations, we might both share some deep and dark personal things that neither of us would ever talk about on stage or in podcasts, the person that you hear in her podcast, the person that you read on her blog, is her genuine and true authentic self. I have seen and soaked in that positive magic from her in person. That positivity, that optimism, just happens to be an authentic element of Joanna that she knows her audience appreciates and that they keep returning for. When I listen to Joanna's weekly podcast, when I listen to her voice and her personal updates on that podcast, I feel connected with her and reconnected with her. I can feel myself smiling for all the positive energy and spirit that she pushes out into the world. So, you can be authentic. You can be genuine, but that doesn't mean you have to let it all hang out, the good, the bad, and the ugly. Based on your audience and their needs, you can share the true things about you that you are passionate about and passionate about sharing. And you can decide to not share some of those other things that aren't appreciated by that same audience. Stina spoke about sharing family issues as they pertain to her and her perspective. She spoke about being genuine and authentic and sharing an element of something. For example, she loves chocolate and she loves traveling. But that doesn't mean she needs to document and share every single piece of chocolate she's consumed, or to broadcast when and where she's traveling all of the time. She does respect the privacy of her family, after all. But she can still share elements about her personality, her passions, without revealing intimate, personal, and family details. She is still being authentic and real and connecting with her readers and making sure that she's providing them with the things that they have come to her fiction and to her non-fiction blog writing for. Stina is being authentic. Now let's turn this on you. What is it that you're passionate about? What is it that you love talking about and that you love sharing? Is there a way for you to share that passion in a way that can be personable and relatable to others? Is it something you are comfortable with sharing? Or how much of that are you comfortable with sharing? You might say, for example, that you had an excellent meal at a restaurant. Now you can share elements from that meal and how it made you feel, what it made you think about, what it reminded you of, without saying where it was or who you dined with. You might even go on not to reveal if you're vegan or vegetarian or on the keto diet or whether you're a whole hog carnivore. You don't have to reveal those details, just how that made you feel and how you felt about it. You're still sharing, and that's still authentic. Now, you might have had a terrible retail experience, and that's an example you might share in your passion for great customer service and personal relationships. So you can share the gist of the experience and how it made you feel, how people reacted, how you reacted, without revealing the person you engaged with, nor the retail store, for example. It's still authentic and real without it being a potential libel situation or without people going, oh, dude was at this particular location on this particular day at this specific time. You can still share elements and feelings and passions and emotions without the specific details. So, is there a way for you to share authentically in a way that your readers or followers can see the authentic you? You, first, of course, have to know and understand who these people are, what they like, and why they might be following or reading your work in the first place. And then look at what it is that they're coming for, what it is about you, what it is about your writing, about your persona, that they can relate to. I started sharing the video version of the free Friday Frights. It's because I love doing in-person readings. I love connecting with audience members. And I thought it may be an interesting way for people to see the me, the real me, the same me they would get if I was standing there in person with them, while I'm talking about my fiction, or reading my fiction, or talking about my nonfiction, or reading my nonfiction. That's one of the ways that I have identified who my target audiences and readers are and share something intimate with them. What is it that you can do? What authenticity, what personable and relatable things can you share with your audiences? That's something to reflect on. Until next week, this is Mark Leslie Lefebvre wishing you good writing and good, yet stark, reflections. We'll see you in episode 18.
Thank you for listening to the Stark Reflections podcast. You can find show notes for each episode at starkreflections.ca.
The music for this podcast, Laser Groove, was composed and produced by Kevin MacLeod. Check out more of Kevin's great music at incomptech.com.